You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
This is Jim Gilchrist, voice of the Kingston Frontenacs. You're listening to OHL Overtime, an in-depth interview show highlighting the players, coaches, and broadcasters from around the Ontario Hockey League who make the league so great, as well as in-person coverage of events such as the OHL Playoffs, OHL Championship Series, OHL Combine, and more, exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Here's your program host, Brandon Caputo.
This is a story that started 3 years ago. It's had close calls, heartbreak, unfinished business. But the Knights have made it to the top of the junior hockey world, and the view is fantastifying. The London Knights are Memorial Cup champions in 2025.
Welcome into the season premiere episode of OHL Overtime right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in on our YouTube channel in the video form. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell. And thank you to those that are listening in your favorite on-demand audio platform. I'm your host, Brandon Caputo. We're going to be hearing from three gentlemen this afternoon in a Memorial Cup themed first episode here. We're going to hear from the two finalists from the Ontario Hockey League, two representatives, I guess you could say, correspondents from the Kitchener Rangers and Guelph Storm perspective as the two finalists for the 2027 Memorial Cup. But can't go too far ahead because we have to talk about the defending champions, the 2025 Memorial Cup champion, back-to-back OHL champion London Knights. And I'm pleased to be joined by the longtime voice of the London Knights on 980 CFPL. That'd be the one and only Mike Stubbs. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. In the intro, I played a little bit of your Memorial Cup champion winning call for that final against the Medicine Hat Tigers. First of all, like when you have a call like that and something that just rolls off the tongue, like obviously probably not doing a lot of prep for those sorts of things, but winning moments in your career. But do they ever get old?
No, they never do. And you're pretty lucky because this team tends to provide a lot of those moments, and to be able to see those players get to where they did, because there was really only one ending that would have worked last year after losing in the Memorial Cup final the year before, returning so many of the same players. There was really only one thing, and it was the same thing that 59 other teams wanted, and they were able to do it. And it was not easy, and it took an awful lot. And it's just one of those things you look back and you feel so great for those guys. I do get asked about the word fantastifying, and that came up not on the spot or anything. I was saving that one. I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I was over at a buddy's place, and we were playing Blades of Steel. I even forget whether it was on a Nintendo or what it was on. We were playing Blades of Steel. There were about 3 or 4 of us in the room. And they said, well, you want to be a hockey announcer. You should you're terrible at this game. So you just call it. And so that word kind of came up. A bunch of us just kind of put it together. And I've held on to that. And it just seemed fitting to use it right there. So thank you, Blades of Steel. Thank you, everybody else who was in that room, Johnny Shale and a couple other people. For helping to do that.
For sure. And before we get going further, Mike, obviously people know you call the games for the London Knights, but where can they also find some of the other work you're doing? I know you guys do the Night Shift podcast as well, both the London Knights. So if there's anything you want to plug before we get going here.
Sure. I mean, the Night Shift podcast is available wherever you get shows in audio format. We've gone video this year. You can find that on the London Knights YouTube page, and there's a lot of content there. If you want to see what's happening with the London Knights right now, there are some very interesting new players. And so now we wait to see what happens. And I'm really looking forward to it. There are a lot of encouraging signs early. And now we just drop the puck on the regular season. The Knights have come through the preseason, so they've got a week to kind of work on things and finalize roster spots, that kind of stuff, and then they will get going.
So we'll get going with the upcoming season, Mike. But before we do, it was obviously a great summer for London in the NHL draft, which it usually is. So got the graphic coming up on the screen there for you guys following along in video. Henry Brustevich, Alexei Medvedev, and Noah Reid were the three players drafted into the NHL from the London Knights this season. Brustevich at the end of the first round, Medvedev in the second round by the Vancouver Canucks, and then the Anaheim Ducks taking Niagara native Noah Reid, who played a very solid bottom six role for them in the playoffs. So quick thoughts on those three players being drafted and adding to what is already an extensive list of London Knights that had their names called at the National Hockey League draft.
Well, why don't we work 3-2-1? Because Noah Reid is such a wild story. Last year, he goes into training camp. He didn't have a spot. He was a 10th round pick. He was probably thinking, okay, I'm 17 years old, probably heading somewhere that's not the London Knights roster. There's no room. And yet he showed so much in whether it was training camp, whether it was the preseason, that he earned a spot on the roster. And then he played in 45 of the 68 games and all the way through kept earning more trust from Dale Hunter. And that's what it takes. You earn your ice time. And then you look at the playoffs, he didn't miss a game. And he had a hat trick in the clinching game against Owen Sound in the first round. And so he was a guy who on big stages could do big things. And then he was in every game in the Memorial Cup tournament that the London Knights played. So he just earned everything that he got. And you look at some of the names that he was drafted ahead of, and it's a remarkable story. And so the sky's the limit for him. He will now have a chance to have a bigger role, because there were times when he would play a handful of shifts in a game and yet showed enough that the Ducks made him a third-round pick. And then Alexei Medvedev, almost a similar story in that he split the net with Austin Elliott last year with the London Knights, so he wasn't the full-time number one, but again, showed enough. When Alexei Medvedev was drafted, he was playing for the Vaughan Kings. And I mean, he's a story that goes all the way back to playing in St. Petersburg, Russia when he was a kid. And he wound up leaving at just before his 15th birthday to come and live with a family member in Toronto, played for the Toronto Red Wings. But think about this. Alexei wanted to go to a team that wasn't very good. That's what he wanted to do as a goalie. And the Red Wings maybe weren't one of the contenders in the GTHL that year. And so he wanted to play for them because he knew he'd get a lot of shots and he'd get a lot of work from good shooters. So that's what happened. And then he moved to the Vaughan Kings and he helped them to the OHL Cup final, where they lost to just a loaded Toronto Junior Canadiens team. And they lost 1-0 in that final game. So that compete level has been there. When he was drafted by the Knights, he was about 6 feet tall. Now he's listed at 6'3", and I bet if you measured his arms and his legs, they belong to a 6'5" goaltender. He just has these arms and legs that stretch out everywhere. And again, the hard work, the whatever this takes. He didn't play a single game in the playoffs. He didn't play a single game in the Memorial Cup. He was somebody that would help out the team in practice, and he would stay out there. If guys wanted to stay out late, he would stay out with them, and he was taking one-timers, and it was just what was needed, and he was there to do it. And then Henry Brustevich, he's a guy that when he started at 16 already looked 22. Now he looks about 25. He's got great maturity. The thing that will really come into kind of sight this year will be Henry's ability offensively. He's got an incredible shot, but there haven't been a lot of places to let him use it because the Knights have had loaded power play units the last couple of years. Henry's now going to get a chance to unload that and unleash that, and people are going to notice it. And then the stuff that he does, the little plays that he makes, little tiny plays, breaking up a pass or reading things right and stepping in a lane. He just does that all the time. His IQ is off the charts, and that's why you see him taken in the first round.
And when you talk about the London Knights, Mike, and when you come off 2 straight OHL championship teams and a Memorial Cup, winner, and Dale Hunter and Mark Hunter and the great program that they build over there, when you talk about where they might, where things might go for this upcoming season, and I'm going to pull the standings up from last season here. Obviously, the Knights had a great season in the Western Conference, won the Western Conference, 55 wins, just really dominated most of the season. When you look at what you're expecting from this team this coming season, going to be missing some names, some players graduating on to the National Hockey League, which they usually do from the London Knights. So it's what is going to be the next crop of those great London Knight players. You're still going to have some of the team from the last few seasons remaining, but when you look at where the London Knights might finish within the season, what is sort of your early preview of what you're looking at from this team, and where you think that they're going to shake out in the Western Conference with the new NCAA eligibility and the new players that have been brought in?
Right. There are so many unknowns this year. I mean, you look at Kitchener and you say Kitchener's roster is basically last year, and they were really good. And so I think you kind of put Kitchener in that number one spot. You've got Windsor that has been building and has had all of these young, dynamic, skilled forwards. Bill Bowler's just done a sensational job in building that team. And I think you kind of put them in there. And then you've got a few teams, I think, that come next. And I think the London Knights would be fine to be in that next group and then see where things shake out, where you're finally, for the first time in a couple of seasons, not the team that everybody is gunning for, but they have added some players that one came from the NCAA, and Braden Clark, his dad, Chris Clark, was a captain of the Washington Capitals and played for the Columbus Blue Jackets and played for the Calgary Flames. And so you've got veterans coming in. Ben Wilmot would be another who had grown up in the U.S. Caden Hawkins is another. He's from St. Louis. Caden Hawkins is a guy that has a great shot, great one-timer, and he has his dog to thank for it. So his dad would tell him, Caden, you need to shoot 200 pucks a day. And a lot of dads will tell that to their kids, and their kids will go, okay, I'm going to try this. And then they'll get through 10 or 15, and they'll go, this is hard. And you go and do something else. But Caden took it to heart, and Caden fired 200 pucks at a net every day. And they have a dog named Crosby. And Crosby learned to fetch pucks to the point that if you hit a post and the puck bounced away, you could say, Crosby, go get that puck. And Crosby would go and get the puck and bring it back. And you hear him telling the story, and you're thinking in your mind, like, picture it right now. You've heard the story. What kind of dog is Crosby? I don't know. Must be a black lab, a chocolate lab, a retriever of some kind. Wow, to be able to go and pick up a puck. Cockapoo. Crosby is a cockapoo, this little white dog, and Caden's got pictures of him with a puck in his mouth as he comes and brings it back. So there are a lot of new faces, sure, and on the back end, you've got some new faces. We'll be talking about Julian Brown and Linus Funk a lot. So there are a lot of unknowns, and I think quite a few rosters have this in the OHL, where you've picked up guys from the BCHL, or in Braden Clark's case, he was at Providence College last year. You've got a couple of those. So it matters how those guys fit in, because we're going to see, Brandon, a few surprise teams that you just did not expect, because you've got guys who come in, fit in, and make a big difference in games.
And 16 new players, as you see on the screen there, that are signed. Maybe not going to be London Knights this season, because they do such a good job of putting those guys maybe in different leagues to develop them before they come up to the London Knights system. But when you have so many new players coming in, and some of those key guys to replace, you talk about, what players might be able to step up there, and some of those new players that people may not know, but could become household London Knight names, like the Easton Cowans, the Denver Barkeys, the Oliver Bonks in a few years, that back in 2020 or 2021 you might not have heard of.
Yeah, and there are names like that, and I'll give you three of them up front right now. They are Logan Howry, who was the Knights' first-round pick last year, had 7 points in 4 games in the preseason. Jackson Cover, who right now is playing in his 5th year of organized ice hockey. Grew up in the Cayman Islands, played roller hockey, played soccer, athleticism off the charts. His hockey IQ, you would say, is off the charts. This guy just makes plays. He can bring you out of your seat. Now, he's 17. Give him a year or two, and he will bring you out of your seat. And the other guy is Max Crete, coming over from the Niagara Ice Dogs. And Max has had a tremendous preseason. And so I really think, as you alluded to it, 3 years ago, if we were doing this, we would have been talking about Denver Barkey, Easton Cowan, Oliver Bonk as being that core that you really grew around. If you're looking to grow around a core, I think you're looking at those players.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see this new crop of London Knights take that step forward. And when you talk about some of those players that could be back, Sam Dickinson is a name that could obviously be back, but he could also be in pro hockey. But I want to focus in on Sam O'Reilly for a second, Mike, because a guy that was traded in this offseason, not by the Knights, but by his NHL affiliation, goes from the Edmonton Oilers to the Tampa Bay Lightning in a pretty big prospect swap between those two teams, and a guy that looks like could be taking a bigger step forward and be one of the leaders on this team coming into the season. So what are you expecting to see from Sam O'Reilly? 71-point season, and was so good in the playoffs for them in that role, especially when Denver Barkey went down with injury. So what can you tell us about what you're expecting to see from Sam O'Reilly back with the Knights?
Brandon, Sam plays the game one way, and that is as if it was the Memorial Cup final. He set up the game winner in the Memorial Cup final, and he had 5 points in 5 games in the Memorial Cup tournament. I mean, this guy does not mind the big stage. And his approach, you really hear this at all levels. You'll hear players who will now go away to NHL camps, and they'll come back and they'll say, wow, I was really impressed by the approach of this game, or the way somebody handles their day-to-day, or just their preparation. That's Sam. When you come into the London Knights, you are so impressed by that. You think about things that young people do, play video games. Sam doesn't play video games. Sam is a guy who really works on himself, his game, and he's got this focus. And I really look, and it's strange to go back over that trade that you were mentioning, where Sam, who is a first-round pick of the Edmonton Oilers, is traded to Tampa Bay, and it happened kind of quickly for Ike Howard. And Ike Howard is a Hobey Baker winner. And so at first you go, oh, a 1-to-1 swap. But, Edmonton's been really positive with Sam O'Reilly. I mean, when he was playing in a preseason game, he walks into the dressing room and he's got a stall where on one side you've got Connor McDavid. On the other side, you've got Corey Pare. I mean, that's how highly the Edmonton Oilers thought of Sam O'Reilly. And then you kind of put it into perspective and you think, but wait a minute. He was just traded for a Hobey Baker winner 1-for-1. That's best of the best in the NCAA. And that's not just rookies in the NCAA. That's everybody. And so that just shows what Tampa Bay thinks of Sam O'Reilly. And when you get to know Sam O'Reilly, all of that fits, because he is the kind of guy that you want leading your team. And he will have that role on the London Knights this year. So he's a really important player. I mean, Brandon, you nailed it. He is a really important player on the London Knights for the direction that they go in as this season gets going.
So, Mike, as we go forward here, how many players are going away for the Knights to NHL camps? Do you have the exact number? And with that, I mean, the Knights sort of go through this more so than maybe other teams do, because they have so many players that have NHL affiliations. So they might start the year without some players, and they're able to sort of tread water and get through that until all their complement of players do come back. So what do you expect in here from the first week or two of the Knights until they get some of those players back from their NHL camps?
Well, it won't be as many as past years, believe it or not, the last couple of years. So at least that becomes helpful because you're not dealing with as many holes. The one thing the Knights have is no Will Nickel. He is out 4 to 6 months after undergoing surgery in the off season. And so there are some holes, and that means that there are jobs up for grabs. You're going to see a younger roster to begin things, and it will ride on the goaltenders. And Alexei Medvedev is a returning goalie. The Knights also have 2 other goaltenders still on the roster, Seb Gatto and Jaden Cholette. Both played last year in the BCHL. Gatto and Cholette are also draft picks of the London Knights. They were not free agent signees, and both have performed incredibly well in the preseason. Gatto played in 90 minutes, had a save percentage of .953, and Cholette played in 89 minutes and had a save percentage of .943. So they are 2 goaltenders that now make up kind of a 3-headed goaltender unit on the roster, and it'll be up to the Knights as to what they want to do with 3 goaltenders. But you certainly will rely on your goaltending a little bit, and then guys filter back, and Mark Hunter always says it. He likes to look at his team for the first couple of months, see how they're playing, and then you kind of make decisions on either what you need or, where improvements could be made or what to do, those sorts of things. So I think we'll see that kind of a year from the London Knights and really see how all of these new faces come together. We've got two guys on the back end in Linus Funk and in Julian Brown, who might vie for most interesting man in the OHL. And Julian Brown is somebody who started his hockey career playing lacrosse. His dad was the coach. And so he has this physicality, and it does come from lacrosse, but his parents have always stressed education and academics. He speaks 3 languages. He is just the most engaging guy, where he was skating in the summer with another former London Knight, Tony Ostranges, and they just started talking off the ice. Next thing you know, they're on these floaties in a lake, and they've just spent so much time chatting about hockey and life and becoming buddies that they've floated out too far, and people are yelling to them saying, hey, we got to get you back. And so never a danger, but that's just a day in the life of Julian Brown. And then Linus Funk, we asked him almost right off the bat. He's from Sweden and is 6'3", but he's got some two-way to him where he's good in his own zone, and then he's also very good offensively. And Linus says, well, I'm kind of missing the food. And so we said, well, there's quite a few places to go. I mean, there's lots of great food. He goes, oh, no, there's lots of great food here, but I'm really missing Arctic char. And I thought, wow, that's a tough one to find. You can't really go to a pop-up stand and find that, or a food truck. I said, Arctic char. He goes, yeah. I said, do you fish for it? He goes, oh, yeah. I fish for it, and then I cook it over a fire up in the mountains. And that was just a typical day for Linus Funk. So you've got some really interesting personalities who the Knights will be bringing together this year. But a lot of great characters and a lot of great character, which should work out well.
Amazing stuff there behind the scenes, and Mike Stubbs always does a great job of giving us some comedic relief here when he does come on for his appearances. Mike, before I let you go, you obviously remember when London hosted the Memorial Cup. So in your opinion, I'm going to put you on the spot with Kitchener and Guelph, and I've got Josh Brown and Mark Pare coming on a little bit later to discuss those two markets and what they could offer. What do you think for the two finalists, Guelph or Kitchener, for the 2027 Memorial Cup when it comes back to Ontario?
Well, they both hosted before, and they both did outstanding jobs in hosting. I still think this has been Kitchener's to lose from the beginning. And so I think, if they put together their proposal, they have already started, and Guelph's doing this as well, but Kitchener has a real eye on 26-27 as to what the roster will look like. And I think that may be the tipping point where they may be a little bit more Memorial Cup ready than the Guelph Storm. And that's something that the bid committee does look at. And so I think that gives them the edge in the end. So I think the Kitchener Rangers and the city of Kitchener, I think you'll see them in the 2027 Memorial Cup tournament.
Well, the longtime voice of the London Knights, Mike Stubbs on 980 CFPL. Catch him and Jim Van Horn for another great season, calling the London Knights games home and away, every single game there throughout the OHL season. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time before the season gets going, and look forward to checking in with you again throughout the season about the London Knights.
Brandon, keep up the great work. Thanks for this.
We'll be right back here on OHL Overtime, and we'll hear from Josh Brown from the Kitchener Rangers perspective. We'll be right back after this.
Butt ends are hockey stick grips, specifically for the top of the stick, designed to replace traditional clock tape. They're made of rubber and offer a more consistent and comfortable grip than tape, aiming to improve performance and reduce slippage. Butt ends are an alternative to regular stick tape that provide enhanced grip and comfort, are durable, reusable, and consistent with the ability to reduce vibration. The grips are available in a variety of styles, designs, colors, and even have options for specific player names. At Butt Ends, they are committed to providing the world's highest quality stick grips and continue to bring new technology and ideas with each new grip design, regardless of sport. Alex Petrangelo, Akil Thomas, Max Domi, Aiden Hill, and Tim Stutzla are just a name of few who have proudly used Butt Ends for peak performance at the NHL level. Check them out at buttendswithaz.com and use our referral code buttends.com/discount/armchairgm to get 10% off your order as part of our community. Engineered for greatness and performance. Butt Ends, the #1 grip in hockey.
Hi, this is Larry Milat, and you're listening to OHL Overtime.
And welcome back to part 2 of today's OHL Overtime season premiere episode, talking Memorial Cup here on the opening episode of the season. We're back with Josh Brown at Josh Brown Record. Obviously does a great job covering the Kitchener Rangers and a lot of the other sports in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. Josh, thanks a lot for joining us, longtime colleague, and great to get to know you with the games in Kitchener, and as well, you're a friend of the show with the OHL 60 podcast now on board. I know you're an avid listener to Colin and Reese as well. So I really appreciate you coming on today and willing to discuss some Rangers for obviously the 2027 bid, but what looks like a very hopeful 2025-26 season as well.
It's always good to talk to you. And I haven't been invited to their podcast yet. So you beat them to it. I like that. Okay. I am a big fan of that podcast, but just a listener right now.
Well, they did shout you out about 5 times when we were all on the Mike Farley podcast over the summertime. So
nice,
I think you got enough airtime over there. But
can never have enough. No, I'm just kidding.
With that said, Josh, I know the Rangers looking to host the Memorial Cup for the first time since the 2008 season. What do you remember most about the last time that they were able to host that tournament? They, didn't end up winning it, but winning the OHL Championship, I'm sure, was very special at that time as well.
Well, what I remember is I was covering high school sports back then, so I didn't get to cover the Memorial Cup in Kitchener, unfortunately. I was new to the record, newish. I've been on with the team, I think, since 2011, so almost 15 years. What I most remember about the Cup was when they presented it to the Spokane Chiefs, it fell apart. That's the infamous, I don't know if you've seen the clip on YouTube, but it actually broke in half. So you have half the team holding this little, tiny teacup and the other guys holding the trophy, and Dave Branch looking mortified as at the mishap. But so 15 years on the Rangers, and this would be, I've covered 3 Memorial Cups in part in different towns, but this would be my first main one here, being kind of the guy to write about the Rangers, and looking forward to hopefully seeing them win the bid. That'd be awesome. I always say, I always want to go to a Memorial Cup somewhere a little more adventurous, like out west or at a Halifax, instead of going to your first one with a team you cover in the town you're always in. But at least you get to sleep in your own bed if it works out for them.
Yeah, well, it's going to be close regardless. Guelph and Kitchener, not too far of a drive for you, so I'm sure that'll be good for a lot of us here in the Ontario Hockey League, that it's more of a centralized bid with that sense. And before we get into the heart of that discussion, Josh, it was obviously a good summer for the Rangers as far as the NHL draft class. Got it up on the screen for you guys watching on the video version there. Cam Reed, Luca Romano, Andrew McNeil, and Matthew Lachar were all drafted to the National Hockey League. Reed by Nashville in the first round, Romano 3rd round by the Islanders, McNeil 6th round by the Canadiens, and Lachar is a 7th round pick by the Leafs. What were your thoughts on those 4 players and sort of the impact for them to be able to be drafted, and then the impact that they might have on the Rangers this upcoming season?
I think it was a tale of two parts here. The first 2 guys everyone expected to go. McNeil and Lachar were a little bit surprising, though I think anyone in Kitchener wasn't surprised to see Andrew McNeil go. I think he only played about 35 games or so last year, so he was in and out of the lineup as a healthy scratch because they were so deep. But when he did play, he was such an impactful player. And then as the season went on, there's always those guys on teams, right, that kind of start out a bit fringy. Matthew Andonovski was a guy like that. Max Diarcolo, who got invited to Detroit's camp. And then as the season goes on, these guys work their way into the lineup that can't be taken out. McNeil was one of those guys in the playoffs. He really established himself. And I think that's where he turned a lot of heads. So I love him as a player. I think he's one of those guys. He's no nonsense, a little bit of grit. Great personality. So I was happy to see him go. Cameron Reed, he's a future captain. Luca Romano, he'll be a top scorer in this league one day. That wasn't surprising. And Lachar ran into him a couple of days ago and just gave him a quick congrats and asked him how his family, if they were pretty happy. I think they were a little surprised, as everyone was. But another guy I think that has potential, right? I think that's what they see in him, is if he can maybe dial back the physical element, a part that takes him to the penalty box and just use it for good as a power forward. I think he has some potential there to be a 20-25 goal guy in the OHL and a real difference maker. When he's on the ice, he's an intimidating guy. And another guy who I had one coach told me, coached something like, 15 years in the CHL, never had a guy. He's never seen a guy work harder than Matthew Lachar. So I love those underdog guys who get there on hard work, and that seems to be working for him right now. And I expect a different kind of year for him. I think he'll be more of an impactful player and get a little bit more responsibility on the Rangers this year.
What are you thinking about Cam Reed this year? Nashville traded up to get this guy. They were really obviously intrigued in his skill set, and a guy that took a big step in his second year, looking to take a bigger step in the third year. Solid two-way defender, 54 points this last season. But what would you say about Cam Reed that you're really looking for him to take a big step in going into the third year now that he has that NHL affiliation to his name?
He's just one of those guys that keeps getting better every year. I haven't seen a defenseman in a long time here who really stole your attention when you watched them. Last guy I think that really commanded a game would have been Ryan Murphy. It might be a bit before your time. He ended up playing in the NHL, Carolina Hurricanes, and then in Europe, and then I think of the A. But he was the kind of guy who would get the puck behind the net and could skate right up the ice, deke through a whole team. And you're starting to see that from Cam Reed. He was a little cautious as a young guy, rightfully so, all young guys are. But he's really starting to open up his offensive game now, putting up points. I think he was 4th overall on the team in scoring last year, kind of sneakily, 4th or 5th anyway. Tied for the team leading in assists. He doesn't just keep getting better, but he takes giant leaps. And I think when you see that in players, those are the guys that are going to be special and really have a shot at making the NHL.
Josh Brown from the Waterloo Region Records with us. I would be remiss, Josh, if we didn't sort of talk about Jackson Parsons, and not necessarily what he's done, because we know OHL Goaltender of the Year, OHL Overage Player of the Year, graduating on, signed by the Ottawa Senators organization, wishing him the best of luck there. But realistically, trying to replace a guy like Jackson Parsons might be difficult, right off the bat, just given how much he meant to the franchise. So one of the biggest storylines as far as Rangers camp, would you say, is sort of the goaltending situation, and who's really going to step up and take the reins there in Parsons' graduation?
Well, yeah, OHL and CHL goalie of the year, right? So this guy is like the every trophy you could win for goalies. He did well. I mean, the good thing is like, not to take away from Parsons, and I think he would admit this too, but the Rangers play a pretty good defensive style, so it helps any goalie have a bit more of a shot. But I mean, he obviously stood on his head and stole games last year for them, especially in the playoffs. You just can't just replace him. I mean, the Rangers are going to try. They turn to Swiss goalie Christian Kirsch, San Jose Sharks draft pick, away at camp with them. Big goalie. Didn't have the greatest year last year, but split the season between two teams because he really wasn't getting some playing time. So kind of never really had a chance to find his rhythm. And then, as a goalie, that's super important. And then you got Jason Schaubel, the guy's quietly done everything the teams asked about him. High draft pick. Didn't play hardly at all last year. I thought maybe he was going to be the guy coming into this year. Now they go get this veteran guy, so he's going to be, I would assume, the backup to an NHL drafted player. That being said, he did get invited to be on Canada's Ivan Halinka team, and he will see way more action than he did last year. He was under 20 games last year, I think. So he'll spell him off, and maybe with the eye toward, if he has a really good year as a backup and starts to steal some starts from Kirsch, he might be the Memorial Cup goalie if they win the bid in 2 years.
And I got up on the screen, there's some players that are notable players that are joining, leaving, some of those being overagers as well. So from some of the signings, and we know the whole Adam Valentini situation, and you wrote a column on that that people can check out at the Record. But, that's one less player, and they've had to kind of compensate for that. Now I'm getting some draft picks back to be able to use, I guess, if they want to go for it this season. But 2027's a thing that they have to look at now, as far as not closing their window on just going for it this one season. So with some of the players they've added in, like, do you see this being that 2-year window? Do you think that they might have to sort of not go necessarily all in this year, even though they have a really good shot at getting back to the Western Conference final?
It's a really tricky situation because you have, and believe me, I'm not one of those people who think London is going to be this disastrous team this year because they're losing a lot of Memorial Cup talent. Like, that team is still stacked, so nobody should be overlooking or underestimating the London Knights. The Rangers are in a tricky situation. Like, they've got some guys that will be leaving this year, and like Christian Humphreys and Jack Pridham at the end of the year. 2 guys will be on their top line. Luke Ellis might not be back, so you could potentially be losing like your whole top line. So do you want to go for it this year, or if you get the Memorial Cup, or you've always got that at the back of your head because you have to have a good roster? The good news is they have a really good group of 2007s. So the core of their team will be 19 next year. And I think that's the age you want if you're the host of a Memorial Cup and you're in it, or if you get there on your own and you know, because you need to have an older team. Those are the teams that typically win. You don't win with 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. So though, you know, Reed, Romano, Lamb, McNeil, all these guys are going to be in their prime. Jacob Jou's younger. The Finn they just got, Oscar Hemming. You know, I've been told he's a way, I shouldn't say way better. He's just as an exciting player as Adam Valentini was. So losing him stung, but then you get this other kid coming in who maybe brings a bit more of an edge. I don't think so. I don't think that set them back too much, which is nice. But Hemming's supposed to be a heck of a player. He'll be a little younger, but if they get the Memorial Cup on that squad, and they have some assets, they're not teaming in assets. Like maybe Guelph has a lot more picks, but I think Guelph has a lot more work to do to build a Memorial Cup team. I think Kitchener's they've known that this is the year they wanted to bid since they started that draft, and they went out and signed a heck of a lot of guys from that Cameron Reed draft, and they're all playing on the team and have been playing and been contributing as well.
So as far as the standings last year, like Kitchener finished third in the conference, in the Western Conference, and it was something that maybe they thought that was a little bit premature, being that good that quickly, and then the reverse sweep there on the Windsor Spitfires was pretty incredible to be able to get to the West Final, losing to London, who went on to win the OHL Championship and the Memorial Cup. So when you look at where Kitchener might fit in the Western Conference this year, are you thinking somewhere in that top three once again? If they sort of strategically make some moves to make their team better for 27, as you mentioned, with the Memorial Cup bid. So we'll know sort of by November-ish what team, either it's going to be Guelph or Kitchener, that does get it. So at least maybe they don't have to make the moves before the deadline. But what would you say is sort of, you know, Mike McKenzie's, I guess, on his to-do list now going into this season and making sure that, you know, he sets himself up for what could possibly come in 2027 as well?
Well, to the start of your question, Sarah, the predicting business is, I hate it. I think I picked the Rangers to finish 7th last year, and they are the second best team in the OHL. So, like, the one thing I will say is Coach Yusio Hokus gets the most out of his guys, and they're playing a real tight system. The guys are all bought in. They're all on the same page, from coaching staff to players to prospects. People coming in know that this is expected of them. So he can get guys to play. He gets the most out of his guys. He's done a really good job. And it's a killer team. You know, I mean, Mike McKenzie's, you know, a very savvy GM. Joe Birch is a former CHL guy, runs the team. Now they got Steve Biankowski, who was the former CEO of the club for decades, running the Memorial Cup bids. So there's some beasts behind the scenes here putting this bid together. As far as what they have to do as a team, it's going to be a weird year. Like, where do I see them finishing? A lot of people have them winning the West. I'm not, haven't really done my predictions yet, but they'll definitely be top 3 in my opinion. It's hard to say because they're starting the season without Carson Campbell, Luke Ellenis, Andrew Vermeulen, 3 veteran older guys who all had surgery in the offseason. I don't know how long they're going to be out. They could miss a month. They could miss a couple weeks. So how good are they going to be in that month? They might lose some games. Then they got, I think we were talking earlier, 11 guys headed to NHL camps. Some of these guys are going to be going to World Junior tryouts. That always is tough to OC London. You know, that's when they lose their game. They're like 4 games a year, whatever it is they lose during that kind of December break. So I don't know where they'll be in the standings early on. I think they'll be a second half team. McKenzie, I think I know his strategies he wants to build a Memorial Cup winner. So the core of their team is going to be from within, free agents, drafting guys from the import draft. But they always got to add a couple extra guys here to push over the top. Whether he can get that this year for a decent price, I don't know. It's such a weird landscape in the OHL right now with the NCAA, guys coming and going. I keep hearing about guys that might leave the OHL halfway through the year and guys who might come back from the NCAA, and I just don't think we know how that's all going to work out. So it's kind of hard to form a team for 2. That's what, you know, I was going to wanted to talk to Stubbsy in London, because I don't think they added too many guys last year. Like, most of that team was in place come September. They weren't, from what I recall, I don't think they were too busy at the trade deadline going and getting guys. So I think if you can do that, that's the secret. And I think that's what he's quietly been doing, is building this team year after year, starting with a strong class and adding these little, free agent finds here and there, and getting some guys with a lot of hype in the import draft, hoping it will all come together. I imagine they'll add 1 or 2 guys next year. Like I said, though, I don't know if that starts this year or not, just because other teams who are going for it this year might come in with a higher package that the Rangers can't beat. And they're not. I don't think they're going to trade any of their core guys. Like, I can't see them. They'd have to be their youngest guys, maybe, get to get the veterans in.
And we won't really know the impact of this, Josh, for the next couple seasons. Like, we have to see how this new landscape sort of works with all these players coming and going, and these NCAA commits being able to come as well. So the windows might be shorter than what we've seen in the past, and we just really don't know the impact of it. We'll have to wait and see how the next 2 years go and how the Rangers are sort of already navigating through that. They haven't won the OHL championship since that 07-08 season. So as far as the community aspect, I know the odd being a historic building, they're doing some renovations there as well. The region and the city of Kitchener is obviously behind the bid as well. So as far as the community impact and the Rangers wanting to put in the work to be able to host something like this, like how confident are you that, they're obviously a finalist, so the CHL must believe in them in that regard. But as far as what you might expect from them when they do host this tournament with upgrades and things like that, just what do you think the impact will be on the arena and the city?
I think they have a 50-50 shot at getting the Memorial Cup. No, you know what? It's funny. There's something to be said. Was it like Brantford's already saying they want to host the cup in like 15 years or something? No, it's like 5 years away, but it's like super. I think there's something to like putting it out there early. And the Rangers 3 years ago said they wanted to host this. And there's certain teams in this league that are, whether you agree with it or not, are seen as pillars of the OHL. And I think the Rangers are one of those teams. And I think by getting out there early, and I would really, really have a hard time seeing the OHL snubbing one of what they consider their strong franchises. If they came in last minute, maybe, but this is something they've been, obviously 2022, I think Joe Birch first mentioned it, that he wanted to do this and the fans deserve this. So I would be shocked if they don't get this. I think it's theirs to lose, and that might sound a little cocky, but I just, between the rink that can hold almost 8,000, it's almost, not double Guelph of Guelph, so around 5. I don't want to put down Guelph. I'll just talk about the pros of Kitchener. I mean, their rink holds, like I said, almost 8,000. They sell out most of their games. So, those games between the Q and the W are going to get to see, people are going to go watch those and buy those tickets. And let's be honest, like, at the end of the day, the CHL wants this to be a success. They want to go somewhere where, the games are going to sell out. There's going to be some hype. The Rangers, when they held it in 2008, they started a couple traditions on their own. One was designing a jersey for the first game to honor military, and then they auctioned them off. And now every host city does that. Ever since they started that 2008, every single Memorial Cup, the host city's done that. They did an alumni game, which was different at the time. And the guy who landed that, Steve Binkowski, he's back as the chair, as I mentioned, of the Memorial Cup committee. So between their front office and the team that's going to be peaking for that year, and the fan support as far as ticket sales and capacity goes, I think they check a lot of boxes. I mean, it's not a modern facility. That's one problem. I know for broadcasting, it's not convenient for TV all the time because they don't have the space that they do at some of the newer rinks. But you've been to the Odd, and anyone who goes there raves about it. And it's a crown jewel arenas on the junior circuit in the CHL. The oldest rink tied with Sudbury in the O, and they're getting a new one up there, so it will be the oldest. And I think all of those things work in their team's favor, and expecting to see them come out on top in this vote.
So before we let you go, Josh, what's one player you're really looking to take a big step for the Rangers this season? Maybe not quick, like, you don't have to go in-depth analysis, but somebody you're really looking at to really make an impact on the squad.
They have a ton of young guys still, so it's hard to say because they are so deep. I think right now they have 2 extra lines and 3 extra D that could all be starters, so it's insane. But I'm one guy I've mentioned before is Tanner Lamb. I don't know if that's really a gutsy call. He was top 10 in scoring, but he's of the guys from the 2007 birthborn guys. Cam Reed, Luca Romano got drafted. He didn't. He was a smaller guy when he came in, a slighter guy, and people have always kind of counted that against him. but he tied for the team league in assists very quietly with 40. Led all those 17-year-olds last year in points, and he's looked hungry. He scored a Michigan goal in an inter-squad game in training camp, and he's messing the mesh in preseason play. I think he's out to prove something, motivated that he didn't get drafted, and he's a really talented player. And I always like the guys who break out are also the guys that kind of show well in the playoffs. And he was one of the guys who really stepped up unexpectedly in the playoffs to be a big contributor for the team. So I'm going to go with Tanner Lamb.
Okay, so I've got two quick things for you to be able to respond to. One, you can respond to Mark Pare, who's going to be our next guest on from the Guelph Storm, and as well Colin Ward from the Dogcast and the Bulldogs Audio Network, a friend of yours as well, wanted me to ask you if you're ready for Game 1 between Kitchener and Brantford.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. The McKee Cup, I'm going to call it there. Jay McKee was an awesome coach in Kitchener and a great guy to deal with, and I'm glad to see he's gone on to thrive elsewhere. Not that I never expected that, but they're going to this Bulldogs team is the real deal. I think they're going to, it's going to be a tough one for Kitchener. They're going to be missing key guys and probably have half their team at NHL camps. Maybe, hopefully they'll be back by then, so it's at least close. But Brantford's the same, right? They're going to have. They got a lot of stars on that team. They've been busy. I was just looking, they're like the new Niagara. I think they've made the most trades in the off season now. They're tied with Niagara, I think, with teams that they've dealt with already. It's already like 6 or 7. It's crazy. But let's see how all those new faces mesh, and hopefully both you guys will be up at the press box and come and say hi. And when you get Pare on, just say hi for me. He used to work in Kitchener, so I know him well. And Timmins boy. I'm just curious what I was hoping he might be on this just because I'm curious to see what he thinks about the Guelph bid. He's plugged in there more than I am, so I'll look forward to watching your interview with him.
Sounds good. So there's Josh Brown from the Waterloo Region Record. Josh, thanks so much for joining us. Before you go, where can people find your work and what you're doing this season for the Rangers?
You can find me and the Waterloo Region Record, physical copy, online, record.com. I'm on X, and I am on Blue Sky too, believe it or not. Keeping it real with all the a couple social platforms. At BC, it's always good to talk to you.
Always great. So that's the Kitchener Rangers perspective of the 2027 Memorial Cup bid. We'll be right back after this with the Guelph Storm perspective. Fourth Wall is the official merchandise supplier of the Armchair GM Sports Network. Our user-friendly site is print to order with no minimum items or inventory needed, shipped right to your doorstep safely and efficiently from their North American warehouse. All of our logos are available to supporters, listeners, and viewers can have the best variety available to them for their swag preferences. All items are priced as low as possible, allowing everybody who wants to support our business with the opportunity to do so, receiving quality and comfortable products in return. Shop today at fourthwall.com with the direct link to our Armchair merch store in the description of all episodes and in the bio of all of our social media accounts. Become an Armchair GM today with Fourth Wall.
Hi, this is Mike Stubbs, radio voice of the London Knights. You are listening to Brandon Caputo on OHL Overtime.
And welcome back to the final installment of today's OHL Overtime season premiere episode and our Memorial Cup talk for the 2027 Memorial Cup. We heard from Mike Stubbs in the first part of today's episode talking about the 2025 champion London Knights. Part 2, we heard from the Kitchener Rangers perspective from Josh Brown of the Kitchener Waterloo Record. Great stuff from him discussing the Kitchener Rangers being a finalist for the Memorial Cup in 2027. And now we're going to hear from the Guelph Storm side of things, the other finalist along with Kitchener for that 2027 bid. And I'm pleased to be joined today by the color commentator for the Guelph Storm on RogersTV. That'd be the one and the only, the OTC, as I call him in wrestling terms, Mark Pare. Mark, thanks a lot for joining us today. I know we got a lot to talk about with the Guelph Storm. Exciting news for them last week, being one of the finalists. But before we get going, where can people find the great work you're doing and what you're going to be doing for the Storm this season?
Well, where can't you find me? It seems like 12 months of the year. Obviously, my big role is with the Guelph Storm on Rogers TV, as you alluded to. You can find us on Rogers TV wherever the Guelph Storm are playing their home games. I also do color commentary work on the radio side for the Sudbury Wolves on 96.7 CKLU. I am a news reporter for GuelphToday.com. And I also do regular work during the summer in the Intercounty Baseball League with the Kitchener Panthers and the Guelph Royals. I think I covered everything.
You're a man of many hats, Mark. That's what I'll say. But you and Ryan Drury obviously calling the games for the Guelph Storm on Rogers TV. Again, tough season for the Storm last season, and we're going to talk about that in the Memorial Cup bid and everything regarding that. But before we get going with that, let's quickly touch on the Guelph Storm players this summer that had their names called in the NHL draft, and I'm going to pull that up right now. There we go. And we've got Quinn Beauchesne, Spada, and Charlie Paquette were the three players that were selected in the NHL draft. Beauchesne, a 5th-round pick by Pittsburgh, Spada, a 7th-round pick by Tampa Bay, and then Paquette, a 7th-round pick by the Dallas Stars. So was that sort of what you were expecting as far as the players that were going to be picked from the Storm organization? And what do you think of those three players now with an NHL affiliation to their names?
Well, I love it. I kind of expected Quinn Beauchesne. He was probably the highly touted prospect out of the bunch that were with the Storm this past season. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, I feel like, is a really good fit. I think he's going to learn a lot from that defensive core and the defensive coaches in the Penguins organization that he can bring back to Guelph. And you know, you look at the other two. Charlie Paquette had a career year last year. He's still the Iron Man in the Guelph Storm ranks, just a little over 210 straight games he has played. The guy has been just a horse, obviously, just getting named captain as well. And you know, it's his second or third time through the draft process here, so I'm really glad to see that the hard work that he's put in has paid off. Grant Spada kind of caught me off guard, admittedly, and this is all due respect to Grant and the great work that he put in this season. It was kind of a late pick. You kind of expected maybe somebody else, even a Lev Katzen, to get picked up by an NHL team, but that didn't end up happening. But when you look at Grant Spada specifically, you think about how this draft had ended up rolling out. There was a lot of big guys that were picked in the later stages of that draft, particularly in that 7th round. And Grant Spada fits that to a T. He's a large defenseman, really starting to find his feet, his skating ability, works the corners, physical as well. And he ends up getting into a Tampa Bay Lightning system very similar in makeup, where they also have a lot of big guys on their NHL team on the back end that he can learn from, and similarly to Beauchesne, can bring that to the OHL ranks.
And when you talk about Spada, he's a guy that when I had asked you as my Guelph Storm correspondent for this season, a player that you were looking for going into camp, Spada was the guy that you picked. So was that sort of a little bit of a draft bump, or do you think that going into this next season, maybe he rounds out, learns how to play in that bigger body and is able to take a bigger role this season with the Storm?
Well, I feel like he's definitely going to take a bigger role this year. He's a year older. This defensive core for the Guelph Storm, very similar to what we saw a year ago, but Spada's going to be counted on to be a little bit more of a leader. He's a year older. He is starting to fill into his body a little bit more and try to find his confidence. And I really do think that draft pickup, I should say, is going to give him that extra boost that he needs to really find his confidence and really find himself into those top 4, those top 2 defenseman style of minutes. And he is going to be counted on a lot this year because he is going to be that name that has stuck around here for the last couple of years. And you start to wonder where, what is his trajectory? What is his development and his progression year over year? He had great progression, even just in the last year. And I think that's why Tampa Bay decided to take a look at him and end up picking him in the 7th round. I really do think 2 years ago, there was something missing in his game where the reads, the hockey IQ just wasn't there as much as you would like to see it. But this past season, it really started to come into form. And now this year, you kind of take that next step and you wonder, what does 25-26 have in store for Grant Spada? And I really think that a confidence level going through the roof and learning from those defensive coaches in Tampa Bay. And more importantly, too, another thing to really note on this is the system that Corey Stillman has put into place here, too. I really feel like his system is filled in a little bit more towards Grant's style. And I really think now that you're going to be into year 2 of Stillman behind the bench, that will allow Spada to really develop even more into this role as a leader on this team on the back end.
And then quickly on Quinn Beauchene, like a guy that, a 5th round pick may have been a bit low than what people were expecting. He played at the CHL USA Prospect Challenge, so he had some eyes on him this season. Obviously, the Storm as a team, if they would have been a little bit better, maybe he would have had a little bit more eyeballs on him as a playoff team and things like that. But you look at him and you think that he's going to take a step forward in his game as well. When you move on from some key defensemen and some key defensemen leave, that he should be stepping into, a top 2 role and really elevating his game to, playing 25, 30 minutes a night.
Well, you look, first of all, at those 2 seasons that he has played in the Guelph Storm. Just 33 games played in his rookie year, 49 games played last season. This is a guy that has struggled with injuries, and it's just been, tough luck, really, if you will. Ended up breaking his wrist in the at a U17 tournament, I believe, in his first season. Struggled a little bit with injury troubles last season as well. But I think this is a guy that when you get a healthy Quinn Beauchene and playing 60, 65, even playing the full 68 games, that this guy can be a difference maker. There were some times last year where you were starting to wonder, especially early on, where he was trying to find his way and trying to find his role, being a second year guy and, being counted on a little bit more. And I feel like there were some growing pains in there, particularly in the first couple of games of the season. I do remember very specifically a couple of turnovers that were caused by him that ended up turning into goals on the other side. Started to get things rolling, and you look at the plus minus, a -10. It's not too bad. It's not great, but I really feel like that's a guy that developed and found a little bit more confidence as the season went along, and got a little bit more minutes. And now this year you really want to see him get into these bigger moments. And for example, quarterbacking the power play, I really feel like that's something that really he needs to start taking a little bit more of a step into. One thing that I noticed with him in the preseason in particular is that he was shooting more. You want to see that slap shot from the point on the power play a lot more. He was doing that a lot more than what I felt like he was doing last year. So I'm already starting to see some progression in his game. And I really feel like being in the Pittsburgh Penguins organization and learning at the training camp, that's going to help propel him even further. And quite frankly, he's just got to shoot the puck a little bit more from the point, but he's got some soft hands if you find him in close, in tight on the net. A guy that can score from many different places in the offensive zone.
So as we move on a little bit here, Mark, the big ticket item this week is the Guelph Storm and Kitchener Rangers named finalists to host the Memorial Cup, which is great. 2 centralized teams for a lot of people to be able to get to that tournament, including myself. It'll be a lot easier travel wise, and both just down the road from each other when you think about it. But Guelph Storm going to be trying to host this tournament for the first time since the 2002 season. And they're looking for another J. Ross Robertson Cup, which I believe was the 2018-19 season, Mark.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
that is correct. So as I pull up the season-by-season stats here, when you look at that, as far as how excited the Guelph community is for an opportunity like this, that this season is important to grow for the next season, and knowing that they're coming up from the absolute bottom of the Western Conference and looking to take a step this year. And then if they are awarded the Memorial Cup, that 2027 year is going to be so important for draft picks and what have you. So what were your thoughts when it was announced that it was going to be Kitchener and Guelph as the 2 finalists, with Kingston and Niagara that were not chosen for that honor? Just your initial reactions to it and what you think that means for the Storm this season.
I really feel like the Storm this season, now everything is just kind of off the ice. You have to basically wait until late November, early December before you really find out that you are going to be hosting it or not. But I really do feel like the team this year, you're not really looking at it as much. You let everybody take care of things behind the scenes. You showcase what you can do on the ice, sure, but at the end of the day, you'll let the people off the ice really kind of have that sales pitch toward the brass that are going to be making the decision on the Memorial Cup. Because I think at the end of the day, you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself. You have enough pressure as it is being an OHL player. You just want to take that Memorial Cup bid out of your mind and just play the games, really, and do the best you can. And that's really all you can do as an organization, and let the chips fall as they may. When you look at these two teams, Guelph and Kitchener, and I know Josh probably talked a lot about it when it comes to just the laurels and the pros that the Kitchener Rangers have over the Guelph Storm in hosting this Memorial Cup bid. Whether it's the the seating, Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, they have about 2,000 more seats. It's a bigger centralized area where you have one of the 10 largest municipalities in terms of population. They have that history. They have recently been able to host different things like the Top Prospects game. They hosted Canada-Russia a few years ago as well. You even look at what they've done in the last few seasons during the preseason and having that preseason showcase. I really feel like you go back to that preseason showcase that they've been hosting with 4 different teams. Really, from what I think about with this preseason showcase that Kitchener puts together, this is showcasing to them that, or showcasing to the brass that, hey, we can host a 4-team tournament. We have the facilities. Here's our prime examples of how we can do it. You look down the road and everybody thinks when they look at Kitchener versus Guelph, when it comes to a Memorial Cup bid, oh, it's a shoo-in. Kitchener's going to win it. Of course they're going to win it. That's all I've been really hearing. Around here in Guelph, there is a little bit of skepticism, but I think once it ended up becoming Kitchener versus Guelph, there was a little bit more of a, kind of that friendly rivalry of, we really need this. We want to beat Kitchener into this. And when you look at the facility here in Guelph, I really do think it is positioned to host a tournament like this because, again, hosted in 2002. When you think about all the amenities, everything around the Sleeman Center, it's built in a mall, for crying out loud. There's a lot of different things that you can do in their pregame. Yes, I know Kitchener's building a restaurant inside its own inside its own arena, but other than that, you're in the middle of a residential area. There's not much around the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. For Guelph, you have the downtown core steps away. You have the parking. You have so many different restaurants and so many things that you can do pregame that it really does give Guelph a leg up in that perspective. But I think overall there is a little bit of buzz when it comes to the Guelph Storm possibly being able to host a Memorial Cup. And when you talk about that, plethora of draft picks, there's been a lot focused on 2027, in particular the last couple of years. Yes, it was a down year last year for Guelph. When you look at it and you look at the players that are coming up, they're starting to build themselves into a winner. And when you saw their year to year, it doesn't take them long. It does not take them long to go from the basement to the tippy top. This was a team, a franchise that was in the Memorial Cup final in 2014. They were favored to win, ultimately couldn't get the job done against Edmonton. Had a couple of down years, missed the playoffs a couple of times. And then sure enough, what happens in 2019? They were the underdog story of the OHL. They end up winning the OHL Championship and advance to Halifax to the Memorial Cup there. So this is a team that has a history of being able to turn nothing into something very quickly. And with the plethora of draft picks that they have, there's a pretty good chance that they might be able to do just that. But this time, go in through the hosting door, but that they want to go in through the front door by winning the championship as well.
Yeah, and they want to have those bragging rights over Kitchener for sure. And if you guys are following along on the video side of this, I do have a players joining and players leaving graphic up on the screen. Guelph obviously adding a lot of players with the new NCAA eligibility, players being able to come in that have committed to NCAA and vice versa. So general manager George Burnett was definitely busy bringing in some key overage players like Ethan Miedema as well. some great young players like Jocko Wisik and some others, just to name a few. Obviously, the elephant in the room is Jet Luchenko. Is he going to be up in pro hockey this year? If he does come back, does he get moved for a bunch of draft picks? Again, we're not going to sit here and speculate it, but you think that if Guelph is going to be in contention for 2027, that'd be something that George Burnett would have to look at, and he's not afraid to make those kind of moves. So when you look at it, Mark, what do you think is the outlook for sort of the team this season? They obviously want to be better than finishing last in the Western Conference in a rebuild year. So what is your outlook already? It's hard to say in the preseason, but what are you thinking for the Storm this season with that hopeful Memorial Cup bump a little bit?
Well, I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs this year. I do think that you're probably going to see a team that's kind of middle of the pack. You might see them in 5th or 6th. I don't see them winning a division title, but at the same time, too, I don't think that they're going to be exactly where they were a season ago, where they're going to be, bottom of the Western Conference, picking 2nd overall in the next draft. I do think that they have made some moves to kind of show off some of their shortcomings from last season. Their goaltending tandem is a year older. Obviously with Zach Jovanovski as well as Colin Ellsworth, these are going to be the two young guys that are going to be pushing each other to be a little bit better. And, they were great down the stretch, even for Guelph, despite the fact they missed the playoffs. But these are going to be two guys that are going to be, battling for playing minutes. Cruz Resnick is going to be coming up the rear. Don't forget about him. He's going to be playing some junior B this season. But that if one of the two main goaltenders goes down, he was picked up pretty early in the draft and can be counted on. As I mentioned before, the defense looks a little bit similar. They are also a year older, and you're hoping that some of that experience at NHL camps ends up proving to be fruitful for some of these guys, not just the two guys that were drafted into the NHL this past year, but also, guys like Noah Jenkin, who ends up getting an invite to camp too. And, another guy, Rowan Top, another one that got an invite to an NHL camps. So, that's going to be a good defensive core this year that is going to learn from their mistakes from a season ago. Up in forward, as you mentioned, Jet Luchenko, we don't know his status right now. Lev Katzen ends up going to Penn State. So there is a couple of holes to fill, but I do feel like that a lot of the free agents that have come in, some of these early draft picks from the last couple of seasons, have looked very good in training camp. And you could find an unknown and a diamond in the rough this season with this Guelph Storm, these newbies that are coming in.
And you mentioned Charlie Paquette and recently named the new captain of the Guelph Storm. That goaltending tandem you talked about, Dan Kluche enters the organization as well. So former NHL goaltender himself, maybe he's able to help those guys along and give his experience as well.
Former Timmins Golden Bear, don't forget about that.
You're probably one of the only people that can get that trivia question right there, Mark.
He played 2 blocks away from where I grew up. I mean, yes, it was 6 games, but fact of the matter is Dan Kluche played in Timmins for a little bit. So that holds a near and dear place to my heart. But obviously his resume speaks for itself in the NHL ranks as well. And, he's going to really help these, be a guy to get advice from these goaltenders and even the players as well. I mean, life in the NHL can be tough, but he was around it long enough where he can also be another guy that you turn to for some advice, along with some of these former NHLers that are on the bench as well. Namely, another guy into his 2nd season with the team, Corey Stillman. I mean, you win 2 cups for a reason.
Yeah, Corey Stillman, definitely one of those guys in the NHL that was well respected for the way that he played on and off the ice. Quickly, Mark got up on the screen. A couple other players invited to the NHL camp, 7 total for the Guelph Storm. So, anything else you want to mention about those other guys? We already talked about the Spada, the Paquette, Luchenko, Beauchene, but a couple others as well.
Well, Noah Jenkins is going to be one of those guys where he gets picked up in the Cam Allen trade with London near the transaction or the trade deadline last year and made an immediate impact. He's going to be another guy that you're counting on this season. Daniil Skvortsov really felt like he not necessarily underwhelmed, but he was a guy that was in and out of the lineup later stages of the season, ended up becoming kind of that seventh defenseman, if you will, in 7D setups. But you're really counting on him to really step it up a notch here this year, because he is one of your 3 import slots. You want to make sure that he is, put into the best position possible to succeed. And I really feel like he's going to be driven to be a successful piece of this Guelph Storm roster moving forward. But again, you touch on some of these younger guys that aren't mentioned in the NHL camps. I'm really interested to see guys like Will McFadden and Parker Snellgrove and see what the trajectory is for them coming up this season. Some of these newbies that they have picked up as well are very intriguing to me. I mean, Benjamin Brunton is going to be playing Junior B, but he was a first-round pick in the U18 draft coming from the North Bay area. He's going to be interesting to watch, and if he gets in a few games, Ilya Shybinski just ended up getting signed a couple of hours ago. He really impressed during the preseason too. Christopher Soares, a former teammate of Hunter McKenzie's when they were both playing in the midget ranks. There's some pretty good players that are upcoming that nobody's ever heard of before in the OHL ranks, but you might be hearing about them pretty often very soon.
Great stuff there. And again, the Guelph Storm looking to take a big step forward this year with the possibilities of 2027, along with the Kitchener Rangers being the potential hosts for the 2027 Memorial Cup when it does come back here to Ontario. So Mark Pare, the color commentator for the Guelph Storm on RogersTV. Mark, thanks a lot for being able to come on and give us some great analysis from the Storm. We'll be checking in with you throughout the season. Maybe we'll be checking in with you in late November, early December if the Guelph Storm do get awarded that bid over Kitchener. But look forward to being able to stay in contact with you this season and give our listeners, the ins and outs of what's going on over there in Guelph at the Sleeman Center.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Call me up anytime.
That's going to wrap it up for this episode of OHL Overtime and our season premiere episode talking about the 2027 Memorial Cup. Thank you very much to Mike Stubbs, Josh Brown, and Mark Pare for joining us on today's show. Make sure to give us a like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell on the YouTube side. And for those listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform, thank you very much for doing so. That's been another episode of OHL Overtime right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. We'll talk to you again very soon.
This is the Armchair GM Sports Network.